This is a summary of a session that I've gone through looking at Tauber's theorem and what are called Tauberian theorems. I read about this in Wade's real analysis book that I'm almost finishing right now in the Fourier series chapter. But then I started going down the rabbit hole of Tauber's theorem and Tauberian theorems, and it's just a world unto itself, which is very interesting. And I've used it as an example to compare and contrast between Bard, Bing, and ChatGPT. And so in this session, I'm going to describe all the different rabbit holes that I went down into. I'll probably get a little confused here and there because there's a lot of moving pieces to this description, and I don't want this to be a 30-minute video. I'm going to put a transcript of some of the things that I recorded in the description of the video, and there will be a lot of links. And I'm going to try to follow the very nonlinear path that I have followed to get to the point of having this level of completion, but I have barely scratched the surface. I could easily spend a whole week of my life on Tauberian theorems, and the chatbots would help me a lot. This is a great example of how using all three chatbots I find very interesting and useful. All these videos on YouTube that say, oh, you know, this one's won over that one's dead. Forget it. This is like inning one of many innings. Anyways, so I'll get to the issue here. So Tauber's theorem, because I came through it from Fourier analysis, Bard had what I think is the best starting definition to get going. And so it says it right here. It's a theorem that states that if the Fourier series of a function converges to a limit at a point, then the function itself must converge to that same limit at that point. That sentence, I believe, nails it because, of course, if a Fourier series is correct for a function, it is unique. And so when it has a limit at a specific point, then that function obviously has to also converge to the limit at that point. But there's a lot more to the Tauberian theorems, because then it's really a matter of going through all these different fields in mathematics and using that same technique, but not necessarily for a Fourier series, but it could be for a summed series, it could be for a Laplace transform, it could be for anything else that has a limit, that converges to a limit. And so let me see how I go through this. So I have a Google Docs that goes through some of the results just to capture them somewhere. I've shown elsewhere in my channel how I do this, and so I've been keeping what the answers are. This is kind of like my environment. In one case, I actually LaTeXed something just to see where it came from and to be able to read it, because sometimes the bots will not show it in LaTeX, but Bing does. Bing always spits out LaTeX. The only problem with Bing is this very annoying centering thing where it just centers the equation. I find it annoying. Another major annoyance, of course, I'm operating here in Microsoft Edge, a browser that I never use, but it's because it's the only one where I can use everything, because Bing forces me to Edge. Bad, Microsoft, bad. So if we start, now that I said the basic definition, if we go into Wikipedia, there's a very nice article on Abelian and Tauberian theorems. There's a Cicero sum right there, right here. So it's part of how the theorem was proven by Tauber. And so there's also the Hardy-Littlewood Tauberian theorem. So there are some really great sources in Wikipedia. Now, also, this article, and all these links are in the description if you want to go and learn about Tauberian theorems from a professor. He's got a chapter of, I presume, a book, and so he's got a really nice article, a paragraph in here that goes into how some of these theorems were developed, right? So Wiener did something in 1930, Ikehara did something in 1931, and so on. It's actually an alive current field of research, which is really interesting. And then where I believe Bing got some of its terminology is from this particular article, which is also linked in the description of the video. So if we start with Bing, and that's how I did it. I went through, so I'll just tell you about my methodology here. I'm at 5 minutes, so I'm not taking too long of your time. And so I started with Bing, and Bing turned out to be my anchor. I tried to start with ChatGPT, and it turned out that ChatGPT eventually picked it up and got going real well. But in the beginning, I sort of screwed it up. I did not know that sometimes when it answers and it does this, so a 1 of 2 and 2 of 2, or 1 of many, 2 of many, 3 of many, it actually has a different answer. So when I started and I asked the same question, define Tauber's theorem and Fourier analysis, it said no can do. But I went through a whole bunch of questions trying to get it to answer something, and it went down some rabbit holes that were not good for the discussion. But I did not know. I mean, I only figured this out much later in my session, my second sessions. There have been 2 sessions, one last night, one right before filming this video right now on a Saturday morning. So Friday night, Saturday morning. If I'd done 2 of 2, sure enough, ChatGPT did have somewhere in its corpus a description of Tauber's theorem. And it always does this where when I go one-on-one, it takes me all the way to the end. And I'm sorry that it does that. But yeah, in the case of ChatGPT, it could tell me that there were multiple Tauberian theorems, but it went into this thing of Tauber's first theorem, Tauber's second theorem, which was poor terminology. And then when I asked it about the first theorem and the second theorem, it just wouldn't do it. And I kept like trying to get it to do it, and it was like the whole I apologize and I apologize. It just couldn't do it. But then I said, okay, fine. How about I give you a link to Alfred Tauber? It didn't do it either. More apologize. Then I got it back to well-known Tauberian theorems, and it just spit out the same thing. So ChatGPT had a rough start. But then I started going more like, hey, more examples of Tauberian theorems. Sure, it had a whole bunch. And I have not gone through these. Again, I could go through this for weeks, a week or 2 weeks, and maybe I should someday. How many are there? I think this was a dumb question in hindsight. What are some applications? This is where finally ChatGPT got on the ball. But by that time, I had already gone through Bing and Bard. So let's pick it up back to where I was with Bing, which was the main way in which I went about it. So with Bing, it was able to describe how Tauber proved his theorem and how it ties into Abel, or Abel. I'm going to call him Abel. I don't really know. And so, and then how many Tauberian theorems are there? This actually was very interesting, even though I think it was a dumb question on my part. But I really love what Bing said right here. Okay. One possible way to estimate the number of Tauberian theorems is to multiply the number of summation methods by the number of integral transforms. That's an awesome answer, because really, that's what it actually is. So Bing did a really good job here. Very happy about that. I have to give, I mean, of course, Bing is using ChatGPT 4. That's what we're really, when we say Bing in here, we're really saying ChatGPT 4. And when we say ChatGPT, we're really saying ChatGPT 3 for the peasants like me, the free one. All right. And so I actually went down all the questions through Bing and tried to copy the paths, because you know that you lose questions as you go through Bing. And I was able to capture enough of them to help me go down a reasonable path. I'm not going to go through everything in detail. All the questions are in the chat. In the description for this video. But yeah, I was able to go down and ask questions, and ask the same questions of the 3 chatbots. And by the time I got rolling, All three started giving me good answers. The different fields in which Tauberian theorems are proven, how to prove a Tauberian theorem, except for ChatGPT. This is just a very general answer. Define relevant concepts, consider counterexamples. This is just how to prove a theorem one-on-one. It's got nothing to do with Tauberian theorems. I don't know what ChatGPT was doing there, because Bard and Bing really gave good answers that were specific to Tauberian theorems. The applications, how to prove it, and then open problems in the field, and then an example that satisfies a Tauberian theorem. Beautiful, beautiful the way Bard is doing it. It's LaTeX, it's just gorgeous. Then back to Bing. Bing also did a really good job. How to prove a theorem. It gave me the link to this professor, and sure enough, let me see if I have his website. I lost his website, but it's in the chat. If you cut this link, the light-in link, to take out the name of the file, you'll see his picture and his website. Yep, open problems, pretty good. Then when I for the example, Bing just went back to the original proof by Tauber, which is fine. So yeah, just to conclude, you can go down this rabbit hole and have a lot of fun. And I think all three chatbots did really well in their own way. So lesson learned. If you see one of the chatbots get a little lost, you may actually want to go into the other chatbots, ask the same question, and between the three of them, you will eventually get going on a topic. I hope you find this useful.